What's going on, everyone? So, as we all know, a lot of us are on lockdown. It's quite an unusual time to be in at the moment, but I have actually been more active now than I was when I was working in the gym. So, because of that, I found my back and my hips are really tight. I've just recorded the stretch that I've done. So what I'll do is I'm going to go through it with you now, and then you can use it in your own time. Just let me know if it helps you or benefits you in any way, shape or form. So going into the stretch itself, it took me about an hour because I like to make it as deep as possible. For yourselves, I thought I would use time lapse to speed it up a little bit and cram it all down into about a 10-minute video follow along. So I started this just experimenting, really seeing how tight my hamstrings and my calves were. Here I'm using a street hockey ball. You can buy one of these from Sports Directs, where I got it from, or you can just use a doggy ball or a tennis ball if you find that the doggy ball is too hard. And just roll the ball under the soles of your feet, find the tension, and then home in on it. Don't run away from that tension. You're trying to release some of that tension by applying pressure on the ball. And then after this, I go back into my hanging stretch to see if I got some release through the calves by working through that tension in the soles of my feet. Relaxing in that standing stretch, tucking my chin, rolling down one vertebra at a time until I'm hanging over my thighs and getting a nice big stretch right the way up the back of my legs. Following that, I go into a squat, just applying outwards pressure through my elbows to open up my hips. Sinking deep into my hips, I go into a squat to stand stretch. And from here, I'm working the mid spine, getting some nice rotations through, allowing the torso to lead the movement, and getting some nice articulation through the mid spine there. I transition into a downward dog. Pushing my chest through the shoulders to stretch out those lats, and then into a Cobra Stretch where I get some length through my abs. I spend about, depending on how tight the area felt, I will spend a minute or two in some of these stretches, hence why this stretch sequence actually took an hour for me to complete. In this child's pose here, I've opened up my hips by spreading the knees apart and pushing my bum back into my heels to stretch out the inside of my thighs. The pigeon pose in particular, I was in this stretch for 2 minutes on each side, because I got quite tight hips. I find it particularly challenging to keep the hips parallel to the ground in this stretch. But doing so, rotating through the hips, keeping them facing the ground squarely, really helps me to achieve a nice stretch. Moving back onto that mid-thoracic spine. Getting some more rotation through here. This time my hand's behind my head, threading my elbow through my supporting hand and getting more of a rotation through the mid-thoracic spine there. It's all connected through your back, coming through the glutes, through the legs, through the soles of your feet. It's all a chain of muscles. So targeting one of the deep muscles that make up the hip flexors, pushing the hips down towards the ground and pulling the heel into the bum here. To get a further stretch, now I'm trying to pull at the hip flexors from the top, pushing the hips down to the ground, keeping the knee on the floor to help lengthen that muscle a bit more. Focusing on the back of the opposite leg here. Only go as far as you can go with some of these stretches. Try not to force too much length out of the muscles that you cause discomfort that becomes unbearable. When stretching, listen to the body and wait for the cue to increase the stretch further. Reason why you tend to wait about 60 seconds while in a stretch is because the muscle is communicating with the brain, letting it know that it either needs to be relaxed or it needs to tense more because it's in danger of tearing or ripping. So you've got to give the body that time to communicate with itself before you can increase these stretches. Here I'm laying on my back in a crucifix stretch. Both shoulder blades are on the floor, and I'm looking in the opposite direction to where I'm rotating my hips to ensure that the shoulder blades stay flat on the floor. What I'm doing here is I'm breathing into the stretch, focusing on the breath really. Stay with the stretch, feel what the body is doing. I'm just applying a little bit of downwards pressure here to increase that stretch. If you find that you don't need to apply pressure within a stretch, then stay within your comfort range. Working on the glutes area here in the figure 4 stretch. Keep the shoulders relaxed, the head and neck relaxed. Just apply a little gentle pressure, pulling the thighs in towards the chest. You should definitely feel this stretch, the outside of the thighs here. With stretching, it's good to revisit on a daily basis. You'll feel the benefits of the stretch the more you do them. Practice makes perfect practice. Now I've opted to keep one leg bent while I'm stretching, just for a little bit of comfort, so I don't have to overstretch and extend my arms here. And that way I can keep the shoulders and the head and the neck relaxed while still getting a stretch through the back of the thighs. Sitting up, going into a spine twist. It's a hybrid stretch right here. We are applying pressure on the outside of the knee, twisting through the lower spine, trying to stay as tall as possible to get this nice articulation through the lower spine. Nice roll forward, spine stretch here. working on the front of the thighs here. So pulling the heel into the bum again, keeping the shoulders relaxed and pushing the hips down into the ground to increase that stretch through the front of the thigh. Sitting back into a child's pose just to relax at the end of this stretch session. Feel free to find me on Facebook or Instagram at Nigel Scarlett PT. Until the next time, peace.